is 1:18. I'm going to call us back into open session, call us back to order in open session. And so we are at item 5 on the agenda, public comment period. Ms. Henry, I don't see anybody signed up for that. So we'll go to item 6, presentation, discussion of the updated report by the Director of Electric Utilities or his designee regarding customer service, business center practices, procedures and policies, customer concerns and complaints, billing forms and procedures, and LP&L staffing and performance. Mr. McCullough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll call out a few highlights in the written report. Happy to answer questions that y'all might have about this or anything else in terms of those topics. But on page 15, you can see some of the news clippings. We had a pretty busy month for the news media to cover LP&L. A lot of it related to stuff happening in Austin. On page 18, you can see some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in the near future is working on energy efficiency hints. This particular one that's shown there had to do with weatherization tips, which is really important for older houses. Weatherization is probably the cheapest, most cost-effective thing that customers can do to reduce their heating and cooling of their homes. Keep the house airtight as possible, and caulking is relatively inexpensive. And so we'll be running a series of articles about energy efficiency in the coming months, and so we'll be watching for that.
How will you communicate that as far as social media? What is that going to be in the newspapers, or how?
Mr. Rose, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Last summer with everything that we had going on in the spring, I don't think we did a good enough job getting out there ahead of time to talk about conservation, energy efficiency. One of the biggest issues that we're going to have going into this summer is that with the majority of our customers now not going from winter to summer rates, consumption is going to be a main driver of their bills going up. And so I'm going to do a lot of proactive media in April and May, looking forward to summer and reminding folks that from May to June to July is the largest increase they'll see with their usage. And so I'll do that by just getting earned media, going out to the media stations and just doing those interviews. They like to do that kind of stuff to fill gaps, and so I'll try to, on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, do that. As David mentioned, we've got a new news letter that we have on our website called Plugged In, and so we're going to be putting a lot of efficiency stories out there of what people can do on weatherization. The on-certs that we have on our bill will be focused on preparing folks for summer, alerting people to where they can go for energy assistance, Project Helping Hand, or neighborhood house, these areas. I'm going to really drive home that anybody that feels like they may have an issue in the upcoming summer to go ahead and register with these agencies, so if they get into a jam, they're qualified and they can get the funds that they need. We'll incorporate some of that. I talked about David's kind of community road show that we'll do for ERCOT, but I'll be doing a lot of those items too. I typically like to partner up with any of the council members who are having town halls or open events, be available there to kind of spread that message. And then, let's see, we'll weigh out whether or not we think it's appropriate to do some paid media, driving people back to our Powerful Pointers page that gives them tips on what they can do to save energy. It may be worthwhile to do a round of purchase media so that it's all on the digital formats on all the different news websites, so it pops up as a banner on the top that they can click and go over. But the main thing is just getting out ahead of this and having a lot of discussion over April and May, so that anybody that comes back and says, I don't know why my bill went up, we can point back to those educational tips and hopefully will sink in. I don't know what the weather's going to do, but if it doesn't, we don't have a lot of rain over the spring months into the summertime. We're going to have a hotter summer, and we're also going to have something where folks watering their lawns more, it's gonna drive their overall utility bill up. So a lot of this needs to be done in conjunction with city level utilities to drive home that it's not just electricity, but if we don't have a lot of rain, you're watering your yard, I need to partner with the water department and make sure that they're getting their messages out there as well. And finally, we're gonna look to, I've talked to the city manager about this, do those open houses like we did in the fall, do them again in the spring, at, a couple different locations around the city, and we'll heavily promote those, and we'll have stations set up there about energy efficiency, weatherization. We'll also have booths set up there where they can get with customer service reps to sign up for assistance programs if they're not already signed up.
Have you ever thought about going to like Lowe's and Home Depot and some of those places where, people go for whatever, and I don't know, maybe just have something to like you said, the cheapest, most cost-effective way is just talking and doing some things, be proactive, because the people that are kind of home fixer-upper deals or whatever are there kind of, I don't know if we've ever done that.
Yeah, one of the things that we've long talked about, but haven't moved forward with, a lot of utilities will have programs where they'll partner with a Lowe's or Home Depot, and they'll have areas that they can monitor where if somebody does weatherize, if somebody does make investments in their home, that there are rebates that you can get back. That's not been an area that we've fully engaged in, but a lot of other utilities that put resources to that will do that. They'll partner with Home Depot and Lowe's, but that's kind of a greater conversation that we need to have. And
Well, maybe you can find what best practices are at some other utilities.
Yes,
To
ma'am.
do that, instead of reinvent it, just do that. But I just, if you're there and you're getting something, somebody said, well, get ready, it's gonna be a hot summer, and you can do this and this, just an idea.
And I don't know if they would allow us to, do something up where they can pass that out as a flyer to customers or not, but I can certainly check and see, because it's really two different.
Let me make a comment. I think that social media and even the news, people listen to it, but and basically I'm looking at the lower middle class, lower income. But if we could post something, some colorful stuff in the community centers. Also look at I don't know what church it should be, but in the lower income area, and get the churches to put them in their bulletins, and that way you're reaching out to some of the people that do not have computers, or don't go in there and don't have Facebook or whatever, so and that would be low cost.
Senior center.
Right, yeah, senior center, any community centers, like I said, hire somebody, from some town area and have them go through all of them and tell you where they posted them or whatever, but that would be low cost, and hopefully you'd reach out to a lot of people that would never get communicated. And some of the ideas, like you mentioned, coffee is the most inexpensive way, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go do that, so a lot of people can do that themselves, and they're looking at some energy costs that would be coming up, so.
I agree, and I think that's a great idea, and I'll investigate that, and I think getting all the information we can to a lot of these community groups only helps spread that message, because like you said, year round, switching out light bulbs makes a difference, but heading into those summer months, one of the biggest things that we have to tackle, like in the call center, is folks saying, I don't live in that big of a house, I don't understand how my usage could have tripled, and it's the fact that they don't live in a large house, but that house doesn't have proper insulation, and has cracks in doors and windows, so I think that's a really good point.
So we'll investigate some of those suggestions. Thank you. Okay, on page 21, again, some of these charts here on media coverage, you can see the chart there, kind of middle of the page on the left-hand side. And it looks like an all-time record for the number of stories we had in the month. Just looking at that bar there, and of course, the second one to the right from there shows ERCOT was the number one story, 48 out of the total number of stories there. So Matt had a busy month. On page 22, you can see just the words that are down at the bottom of the page there. Calls were actually decreased for the month. You know, we had the month before was pretty heavy because of the rollout of the City of Lubbock utilities. A lot of calls helping customers transition to that new website. But the calls actually came down a little bit month, but our call handling time didn't come down, and part of that was because of the flu took its toll on our staffing, and we were at 80% staffing levels on average for the month. So we had a lot of people out. There were times when we had, half of our call center employees were home sick. So it was really a tough month for us from that perspective.
Dave, do you have a way to tell how many of those calls were electricity related versus the other calls from the other departments?
No, I don't believe we have a way to
No.
really differentiate that, do we?
No, and most of them are about all services.
Yeah, it's the total bill. Typically, we don't have a way to track if it's a specific topic.
Ben, can you go back on 21, that top one?
Sure.
Am I reading it right that Dallas has the lowest residential bill?
Also, well, it was San Antonio.
Like San Antonio is the lowest for this month. The Dallas customers, I think, were low the month before, but they had an increase in cost for the month, and I'm not sure why that would change so dramatically for the month, but it was a pretty good step
So
up in
that
Dallas.
dotted line at the top is what city? It's hard for me to tell the difference in the color. The orange.
El Paso is the top.
It's El
Yep.
Paso. And then that one at the bottom is,
That is Dallas.
That's
that is
Dallas.
Dallas. That
And then
red
the
dot.
purple dashed line is Austin. City of Austin typically has pretty low rates.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to.
I generally don't cover this when I go through this report because I know that Chad is going to talk about it when it gets to the
Oh,
detail
okay.
rate comparison report, and then he's got the pretty slides up on the board that
Okay.
are a little easier to look at. But I'm happy to
Okay.
talk about anything on it.
Well, I did the spec on here because everybody in my district always says, I pay a whole lot less with spec than you would with open net. And that's just not the case.
It's not true, is it?
No, it is not.
And I think that was a fairly recent addition. We haven't always had them on there.
They don't really post their rates, but we can back into it by employees that are customers, and we can get those rates through that way.
That is interesting. That is a myth out there.
Dave, if you don't mind, on your outages,
Yes, sir.
it says unknown. Is that
Okay, you looking at
outage causes?
This is on page 20.
Yeah, I talked to Blair about that before this meeting. This is a new chart that we're still working on. It should have been labeled service orders worked instead of outages. And so you've got outage calls that will work, and then you've got non-outage calls that will work. Non-outage calls would be like tree trimming, lines down. A lot of times we'll go out there and it's a communications line, not an LPL line. And then, of course, street lights is the other call category there. But the majority of the calls that we receive are non-outage calls, other services that customers calling about. So we'll relabel that chart for the next board meeting and bring it back to you.
And
Does this include where someone has a red noise over a pole?
That would potentially be an outage call, but not necessarily.
yeah, we seem to have a lot of fatalities. Utility poles.
Had a lot of poles hit this last month. That was the source of a lot of our outages.
And that, I'm very color challenged, so on January 18, the highest category, I'm not sure if is that construction?
You're looking at
Outage causes.
Animals.
outage causes.
Orange is animals.
Well, that's why I'm saying, I don't tell colors.
Yeah, orange is the tallest with his animals.
Like a squirrel or something.
Those quick, toothy birds, snakes, Snakes usually come along later in the spring, because the snakes will crawl up and get the bird nest. They pay the price, though.
I know I've had a few squirrels.
When they're called out, outage called by a squirrel, they automatically put squirrel guards on.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Just because they're there.
Yeah.
Because
There's such a thing as a squirrel guard.
oh, yeah, it's a plastic cover you put over the bush.
Yeah. That's not a bad suggestion, though. I'll talk to the emergency.
It's just as a matter of practice.
At least make a ticket on it so somebody can come back later on. I mean, if they're working a lot of outage calls, you probably have to take
Have
time
but
to do this point, but at least make a ticket on it where they can come back later.
usually when you have one, you're gonna have another.
Squirrels are very, stay in the same areas all the time.
Roll squirrels, not bad.
Well, make a list, not in the past 30 years, we get the whole.
Okay, squirrel guard. Squirrel does not, roast squirrel is not bad. Let's see, anything else here? Oh, we did get a number of calls on the new water rates that went into effect January 1. The main change was the elimination of the average winter consumption, which, was very difficult for customers to understand, so I'm glad the council did away with that part of the rate. But we did get a number of calls about the rate change. I guess some people's bills may have gone up, others may have gone down. I think it was intended to be revenue neutral overall. It's supposed to be an overall rate change. And then we did add, Mr. Bell, we added, what's the number say there? 283 customers to our police building.
It's up like 1/10 of 1%.
And we haven't done a push yet. We will be doing marketing pushes to get people to switch over. So that should be coming in the future.
I got mine squared away.
Good. But we are seeing some pretty substantial jumps in text messages going out. This month we were at 56% in the number of text messages going out. So people are signing on. There's more, communication going on, reminders to people to pay their bill, things that they've set up. But I think we'll continue to see a lot of that line.
Could I introduce you to high-tech Boatman? He went down, I saw him in line at the break. He's got his paper receipt in his pocket, but I didn't want to give you up on that nonsense.
Hey, the stamp's 49 cents, I pay it when I come to the meeting.
Did you use the kiosk or did you go to the way?
I went to the counter.
We did kind of rearrange the lines in the lobby and everything to try to make more room for the folks at the kiosk, and we got somebody down there pulling them over because it is hard to get people to get out of the routine of going through the line and using something that's new. But I think as they figured out how quick it is, they really like it.
Don't I think so?
Old school.
Go away.
I want to see somebody receive my money when I give it to them.
Besides that, I give it the envelope back in a year.
So for reuse.
As a general evaluation, would you say the transition to the new billing system collection we're smoothing out those?
I think from overall customer perspective, it's been very good. I always internally working through issues. It's difficult behind the scenes, but I think from a customer perspective, generally, it's been very good. I think it's been well received. There were lots of calls at the beginning, lots of questions. Folks who had, saved their, the site on the computer where they've always gone to, and they didn't know where to go to, and, some things like that that were a little problematic at first. But I think, as far as I know, Danny, I don't know if you want to add anything, or Michelle, anything. I think it's been overall a good move, really good move. So I think there's, especially in a college town, we're going to get all the college students, I think, will really love it.
You always have a few bumps in the road to deal with when you roll out a new system like that, but it seems to have smoothed out a lot from my perspective, just in time for us to start working on AMI.
If I had any bumps, I didn't say anything about it. I just kept it myself. Right, Andy?
Right.
Now, you're our beta tester.
Yes. Jerry has been very instrumental in helping us find issues. So
I went to a customer service lady this morning and I asked her, is there any way that you can put all my bills together roughly in about the same date? Because I've got like 12, 13 accounts. And she said, no way, we can't handle that kind of request. So,
Well, and that's because of the routes, the meter reading routes. everything
yeah,
gets
that's,
billed,
she
and
mentioned that.
If you're all in the same area, we could.
No,
but-
no,
But
that's
now, when the new
good.
billing system comes out, we will have some capabilities to let folks choose their own billing date.
They get
This
your
will be a
picture
regional
up down there in the lobby, just tell her, walk her over there and show you.
Do you know who I am?
That didn't work while I was standing in line there.
It didn't work?
The guy behind me said he's gonna waste my time. Yeah, but I had to pay my bills.
Tell her you're a personal friend and maybe merchant.
I don't know. He's on-
Double. All right.
That's, I don't have anything else.
Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. McCollum? Or Mr. Burcham? All right, if there's not any more questions or comments regarding item 6, we'll move along to item 7, presentation and discussion of financial and capital statements, financing options, audits, and financial policies of Lubbock Power and Light relating to debt issuance issues, reserve account funding, cost allocation, revenue and expense projections, purchase power cost recovery factor, and customer meter, billing and service issues. Mr. Sayers.
All right, good afternoon. As Mr. McCullough mentioned, these are the pretty slides that he was talking about. Right now, we're just shy of $117, and typically, as you can see, we go down in the winter and then come back up in the summer, and that's due to the differential we had between the winter rate and the summer rate, but through the last tariff, I guess it went into effect in October, we did a blended rate so that rate would be the same all year long for rate 1 residential customers, which accounts for a pretty big portion of our customer base. So I think it'll make a little more sense. So you can see XL was higher than us in the summer and then dipped below us in the winter. That's largely to do with our base rate not dropping as much as it would have otherwise. And then if we roll in the state average, or the survey average, excuse me, they're at 109 and XL is right at 109. But over the life of the time that we've been tracking this, our customers would have saved about $220 over XL and just shy of 210 over the survey average. I'm actually excited to report that we are over collected $283,000. It's the first time that we've been over collected in 19 months, going back to June of 16 when we had the big surprise with XL's annual production true-up. So our model predicted that we would reduce the under collection by 1.9 million in January, and we were right at 2.3. So it tells me our model's working. Things are going as planned. So we planned the way that we set the rates. If things continue as planned, the way that we set the rates, we will have, I think at year end we were $4.8 million under collected. We will be theoretically perfectly collected at the end of May. So, but we all know that things don't always go as planned. But up to this point, things are going well.
Which would give us the opportunity to reduce the EPR.
I always shy away from saying that because it seems like something comes up that doesn't allow us to do that. But that's the idea.
The hedgehog deal, right?
That's the idea. Yes. So we've actually got financials for you for the first time. The next agenda item, you'll be receiving the annual audit, which everybody was here 2 weeks ago, but you'll officially be receiving it with an opinion in the next agenda item here in just a few minutes. So we typically don't show financials while audit is going on, but now that everything's done and wrapped up, we've got the December financials for you, and that income statement actually starts on page 30 of your book. Just to quickly go through this, operating revenues are pretty much flat compared to this time last year. A lot of that has to do with some of the over collection that we've experienced so far this year, because you'll notice that purchase of fuel and power here is down, but we've actually been over collecting as intended, so that helps. And then, as I mentioned a second ago, we've got the blended base rate It's boosting revenues a little bit more in the winter than we've seen in the past, and then won't be quite as high in the summer. So in terms of expenses, I mentioned purchase of fuel and power is down. That's largely due to fuel costs being lower, and then we haven't had as many dispatches with our unit contingent agreements and power marketing. So only power marketing. Just haven't been dispatched as often as they were last year. Other services and charges is really the driver of this almost $1 million increase. 200,000 of that is for ERCOT legal fees and the legal cost center. 375,000 is for ERCOT transmission fees. And then we've talked about Kubra just a few minutes ago. We spent about 215,000 in the early part of this fiscal year, just working on that transition and that upgrade. So that's the bulk of that 967,000. It's not on this slide, but you will notice on page 30 of your book, we've changed the presentation of the income statement. Whereas we've got to bring on, I guess we did it for two reasons. One, this mirrors the year-end statements, so you can easily tie out ending net position from the income statement to the balance sheet. Before, you kind of had to do a little bit of math to know that they were tied out, but this shows you clearly that the two are tied out. But the second and probably more important reason is as a result of GASB 75 that's come out, the OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, the GASB states that we've basically got to put all of that liability on the books. When I say we, I mean citywide. It's a global issue. And I think Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, there's about $78 million on the city books, which part of that is on ours. And the liability is about $120 million. And so that gap of roughly $35 or $40 million needs to be put on the books this year. And so Linda has set up an entry that will basically book 1/12 of that every month. And our piece is about $5.5 million, which is an estimate, but it allows us to show it on the books, and it's not any big surprise at the end of the year. The reason we decided to show this as a change in accounting principle, when we had GASB 68, if you'll recall, basically the same idea with the retirement a few years ago, we showed it as an operating expense, so that was the debit, and then the credit was on the balance sheet. Well, then we got to year end, and it all got backed out of the income statement and just got shown as an adjustment, a prior period adjustment to that position. And so we didn't want to have that same thing happen again this year. So we actually are showing it as a change in accounting principle, like it will show up at year end, so we can see the true results of the income statement as things happen throughout the year. So anyway, change in net position is 1.3 million, and the change in the accounting principle is just shy of 1.4 million. So it's a really long explanation to explain why we changed the presentation, but I knew that several of you would notice and probably had questions if I didn't address that. So on the balance sheet, things are looking good. Cash and investments are up almost $7 million. It's pretty easy to see kind of where that cash is coming from. At year end, as you know, we're at the end of our summer season, and receivables are elevated just due to higher costs, higher bills. As we go into the winter season, that trend reverses and we begin to collect more cash and the receivables decrease. As I mentioned before, we've also reduced our under collection, at least through December, by $2.7 million. So since that has decreased, that means more cash on the books. And then we have other things on the balance sheet that move, but those are really the big drivers.
Chad, let me make sure I understand so as of the end of December, our deferred PPRF was a little over $2 million. So at the end of January, though, we're now going back the other way, about 283.
Right. So we overcollected 2.3 roughly in January, which was expected. Our model predicted 1.9, and so it came in 2.2 or 2.3, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
On the liability and equity side of the balance sheet, that top line is primarily related to the WTMPA bill. Again, it's the end of the summer, part of the hottest, probably the hottest part of the year, and so the bill is elevated. Now that we're into the winter season, our bill has decreased, and so you see that change from year end through December. And then the other is largely driven by year-end entries, just related to payroll and that kind of stuff that unwinds in October. So in terms of the budget, consumers metered, which is basically our metered revenues, you can see compared to the same time last year, we're right in the ballpark of where we would expect to be. All other revenues aren't up quite as much, and that goes back to the dispatch of the power marketing units, which is Brandon and Massengale. Just haven't seen those dispatched as often. There's a couple of things that look out of whack. Transmission is 34% of budget, with one cost center being at 90% of budget, and all that goes back to some of the same things that we've seen over the past couple of years. We budget all of the ERCOT in 2019 expenses in Richard's cost center, not really knowing how and when those are going to come in. But in terms of proper accounting, we book them where they should go. And so a lot of that has to do with transmission consulting related to our stuff that's been going on in Austin. And so the appropriate place to book those is in the transmission cost center, even though the budget is in Richard's cost center. So we'll probably move that budget so that things don't look quite so out of whack as we progress through the year. Customer service is a little bit higher than they were last year, but again, that $200,000 that we mentioned with Kubra just wasn't an expense last year, but one that was certainly needed and will benefit us in the long run. Trying to see if there's anything else. Overall, total expenses were under where we were last year by about 1.5%, and revenues are tracking pretty well. So, capital program, we've got about $122 million in bonds, about 17.7 in cash for a total program of funds remaining of $140 million, and then at the bottom you can see the projects where we spent the most money in the month of December. So we spent about almost $1.3 million, and as we get further into the year, we'll see the construction tick up, and the CapEx should begin to outpace the depreciation at a pretty steady clip for the rest of the year. So happy to answer any other questions on the monthly financial report.
We ever read the smart meter contract? Is that on
The advanced metering will be coming to the board in the March or April timeframe. We're still working on. We've gotten the master service agreement reviewed by the business folks. We just sent that to the legal folks probably at the end of last week, so we probably haven't had a chance to look at it yet. And then we still haven't gone through the statement of work. I know our consultants have completed their review of statement of work. Now they've turned it over to the business folks to go through that. And so we hope to have all that lined up. My goal is to have it at the March board meeting, but just because of having to go through the legal here and at the vendor, I would anticipate that might drag it until we get to April. It's probably
Have we selected someone yet?
Yes, the vendors have both been selected for both the AMI and for the billing system. So we have been negotiating with them for several months now, and are working on that, trying to get that all lined up.
Chad?
Yes, sir.
I think this is what you're referring to, line item 7611 on the budget centers.
That's right.
That's 90% of budget. That's basically because we've got legal, what amounted to either testimony or consultants for the hearing.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Have been applied in that.
Yes, sir. Two sets of experts, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And then cost center 7413, the overhead lines. I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier. And it looks like most of that's in personnel.
I was going to say a lot of that depends on, they give us, during the budget, they give us an idea of we're gonna spend X amount of time working on CIP versus O&M. And we don't ever know when that's gonna happen during the year. But, the early part of the year, they have certainly spent more time charged to O&M than they have on some of the overhead capital projects. Yeah.
And then I got two more questions. Customer information systems, line item 7512. That's where we got on services and training, that large amount in December.
That's the Kubra.
That's the Kubra you were talking about. Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that. And then the last question I have on the budget is we have in the fund level expenses, the transfer to debt service for Citizens Tower, 619, 668. That's the gross amount, right? That's the.
Yes, because there's the other line, transfer from other funds at the top in the revenue.
Is in the revenue.
Right, so that's right.
So the actual impact is the net of those two.
That's right.
It's about 300, a little bit less than 300.
Yes, sir.
I think that covers my questions on the budget.
Good.
Statement of cash flow is good.
All right.
Any other questions about the financial statements? Anybody else? Are there capital improvement projects? CapEx is going to be accelerated.
Better.
Yeah. If there's not any other questions about that, thank you, Mr. Sale.
Sure.
Appreciate you and Mr. Bertram's excellent work on
Thank you.
on all of that. So that'll bring us to item 8. Excuse me. Discuss and take action regarding a resolution accepting the Lubbock Power and Light annual financial report for fiscal year ending September 30, 2017. And I believe, Mr. Bertram, you're going to cover the financial.
Yeah, I'm going to give a snapshot, and then Chad just has a few slides. Because as you all know, we had a full board meeting on February the 6th. David Coleman and Lauren Berry from BKD were here to present the audit. Chad went through a large amount of slides. We spent a couple hours going through the details on that. And at that time, David Coleman had presented to you that they were going to be issuing a clean, unmodified opinion, and they've also have issued a auditor's communication letter, which is inserted inside the audit that is before you today. But just quickly, this audit is independent from the staff at LPNL and the city that put these financials together, and it's the purpose is to ensure that the accounting reports that we produce are reliable, and it's done in an effort to protect the citizens of Lubbock, to protect our ratepayers, to protect bondholders who are investing in our bonds. So it's a very important annual activity. Chad, you want to go to the next slide? Wanted to kind of illustrate the number of folks at the city and at LPNL who are involved in putting together the financial statements. There's a group of us here. Really, Chad and Deanna this year really did. The vast majority, Chad for sure, really has spent a lot of time working on this, doing a really good job there. And then we have the group at the city that we work very close in coordination with. Linda Cuellar is here today, hiding in the corner back here. But Linda, heads up the accounting group at the city, and we've really developed a good working relationship between the two groups, and they're very helpful for us throughout. And they do a lot of work related to the audit throughout the year and at year end as well. So wanted to point that out. The city's audit firm is BKD. We have David Coleman, who is the partner, and then Lauren Berry was the auditor in charge this year. They came right after Thanksgiving, began their field work, looking at all of our support and backup and all the information that we use to go into the year-end reports. That lasted until about the mid part of December, They then, really went through the review of all the information until the end of January, basically, and in the early part of February, they were able to issue their opinion. We came to audit committee, the audit committee of the city on February the 6th, as well as the full electric utility board on that date as well. And BKD at that meeting did mention that they had issued an unmodified clean opinion. Statements are presented fairly in all material respects. They've also, in that letter that has been inserted in your audit, there in the annual financial report, they have listed that there were no audit adjustments, there were no material weaknesses, there were no significant deficiencies, disagreements with management, nothing to report. So it's all very, very good information that he presented to the committee and to the board. So really, at this point, I'll just turn it over to Chad, and he can go through just some highlights. We know that we went through a lot of this in depth at the last meeting, but just wanted to remind the board of some of the highlights this year. And then if y'all have any more questions, I'll turn it back over to y'all, and y'all can ask away.
Sure. Thank you, Ian. So just, this is in your book as well. The table of contents, this just kind of shows you how the actual document breaks down. So we've got the introduction, we've got the independent auditor's report that Andy just went through. We've got the management discussion and analysis, which is really us telling our story of how did the year go, and obviously the auditors check that and make sure that they agree, but that's us telling our story. Then we've got the actual financial statements, pages 27 through 30, and then we have the notes to the basic financial statements that list out all the things that help explain the financial statements a little further that you might not be able to otherwise ascertain. And then we have the required supplementary information at the very end on page 60. So just got, I think, 3 slides for you. This is our 4th year of improved financial performance, net position, or net income if you're not in the governmental world. It's just over $11.9 million, and that number has been positive for the last 5 years. Our operating expenses were up $17.3 million. The big driver of that, as usual, is purchase power costs related to higher fuel and transmission primarily, and then offset by lower energy costs. As you all know, we've spent a pretty decent amount of money the last couple years related to the ERCOT transition. We also had an environmental remediation issue at the Cook plant that we went through last year. We had higher personal services, maintenance, and supplies that were up by $700,000, and then depreciation expense decreased $1.5 million, and that was largely due to some assets that were fully depreciated in 2016 that weren't on the books this year. In terms of revenues, so I said that operating expenses were up 17.3, revenues were up 21. Metered revenues, largely driven by purchase power again, were just shy of 20 million. We also had our base rate increase that was included in that. And then we saw unit contingent and power marketing revenues increase by about $1 million. The financial model, that fourth bullet point, we anticipated a budget deficit of $683,000, actually ended the year with a $1.4 million surplus. General reserves, we're required to keep 3 months of reserves on hand. We ended the year with $64.2 million, which equates to 3.25 months of revenues. Liquidity is sound. We've got, between cash and investments, they both combined they increased $2.7 million for a total of $67 million in cash. And then our debt metrics continue to measure up favorably with comparable utilities across the country. Our debt increased $1.7 million from the prior year, so we've got $128.5 million outstanding. Quickly, I just wanted to walk you through some of the metrics that the rating agencies care about, and just kind of how we stack up with some similarly rated utilities across the country. Or if Fitch didn't have something, we have the American Public Power Association they also track some of these metrics, and so we like to track these things to see how we measure up and see how we've improved over time. So I'll be focusing on the 2017 column, but days cash on hand were a little light compared to the Fitch A rating, but you know, we're certainly, it's always something that we're working on. Current ratio, we're quite a bit higher than the APPA average. Debt service coverage, you can see, has ticked up each year since 2013, and between the A and AA rated for Fitch. Times interest earned, did a good job this year. Debt ratio, which these next two I think go hand in hand. You know, debt ratio for APPA shows that similar utilities have about 60% of their balance sheet funded with debt, and we're just shy of 43%. And to kind of springboard into the next topic, customers, the debt per customer at a AA Fitch rated utility is just shy of $3,700, and it's just shy of $3,900 per customer at those same utilities where we're at $1,215, which means as we go into this capital program and we're going to be ramping up our debt, we have the capacity to adequately fund that and bring that onto our balance sheet with confidence and still be within the range of what Fitch grades as acceptable. So in terms of CapEx divided by depreciation, we took a dip this year. Depreciation outpaced CapEx by just a little bit. I looked so far, if you do the math through December, we're at 101%, so I expect that to continue to tick up. And then this last one, which really is, I think, demonstrates why we're trying to do what we're trying to do in terms of going to ERCOT is really important. Purchase power costs, ours are 6.3 cents compared to the rest of the nation at 4.6 cents for purchase power. You look at our base rates, which are the charges that we control, we're half a cent less than similar utilities across the country. And then you combine those two and we're higher by 1.2 cents, and again that goes back to the purchase power, which demonstrates why we're making this transition to help benefit our customers so that those pass-through costs are lower. So, anyway, that's all that I had. Happy to answer any questions. I know that we went through all of this 2 weeks ago in great detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions you all have.
So, Chad, I guess the only other thing I would add is, as we did talk the other day about the OPEB adjustment that will come online for fiscal 18, and will be fully on the balance sheet at that point. So,
That's right.
we'll be reminding me again, what's the number we're going to add?
About $5.5 million. Is that right? Yeah, our piece is about $5.5 million.
So when we look at our liabilities on page 28 of the audit report, the post-employment benefits portion is going to go from 9.3 to 14.8.
That math is right. I did it in my head, but yes, sir.
I should probably point out that would have been a heck of a lot higher if there hadn't been certain adjustments in post-retirement.
Right, the changes in the health benefits this year, the city manager helped to implement dramatically reduce the amount that we have to put as a liability going forward. So that was substantial help by those changes that were made.
And I know we went through a lot of these footnotes in pretty good detail the other day, talking about the investments and the defined benefit plan footnotes and some of those other disclosures. So we won't retread that ground unless somebody wants or needs more information. I think all of you were here that day. I don't think there was anybody missing that's here today.
Yeah, we were pleasantly surprised. We expected 3 and we had 8.
It's good involvement from the whole board.
Sure.
I was proud to see it. Chad, I don't have any other questions unless you have any questions or comments for Chad concerning the audit report. I'm going to ask Mr. Conrad to talk about the recommendation of the finance committee.
Well, I think we're all in favor of, I guess, recommending this to the city council. Their approval. But I guess on behalf of the finance committee, I want to say thank you guys for the continued work that you guys are doing, just based on, the audit and what they've said, giving them thumbs up. You guys have done an incredible job. I want to just, we do have to take action. So.
Yeah, I guess if you want to make a motion to, you can.
Okay. I'll make the motion to recommend this to the city council and to accept the financial report as is.
It's not the way the resolution is.
I like to deviate.
Well, is that accurate, though? It's not serious.
Yeah, this would just be an acceptance by the utility board. It's not really a
We
recommendation.
recommend it.
Actually, the council will be approving the comprehensive annual financial report, which isn't really this document. It's just a lot of our information that's
But all
embedded in
we're
it.
approving today is.
Yes, this board would just be approving
That's
this,
fine.
or accepting it.
Ours is rolled up into the city's.
What page is that resolution?
It's on page
This is
44.
Okay.
Well,
So your motion, your motion is to approve the resolution. Accept
or
it.
accept it.
Yeah, accepting the offer.
Second.
Okay, so a motion made by Mr. Conrad, second by Ms. Stafford. Any further discussion on item 8? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, I believe we got that one taken care of. That will bring us into the consent agenda. Item 9 regards a adjustment to the Brandon Station lease, and also in regards to the real property there, Marcia Sharp Freeway. Item 10 is a resolution concerning a 2.5-acre tract north of 4th Street and west of Quaker Avenue for an electric substation. Item 11 is amendment to the purchase power agreement with Texas Tech, previous agreement dated 2005. Item 12 is a resolution authorizing the purchasing manager to execute a purchase contract for a Derrick 47 Derrick digger. Item 13 is an authorization for the purchasing manager to execute a contract for a capacity bank unit with units with controllers. And all of this, of course, is in your backup. Item 14 is for shield wire and conductor cable for the chopper transmission lines. Item 15 is steel poles for the chopper transmission lines. Item 16 is for Chevrolet pickups for LPL fleet. Item 17 is for the customer service web portal access usage adjustment or a termination of the old software. So that's items 9 through 17. If no one wants to pull any of those individual items, I would entertain the motion to approve items 9 through 17.
I move that we approve the items as written.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Bowman to approve items 9 through 17, second by Mr. Bell. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that brings us to item 18, which is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.